Obviously, today we are going to talk about being a lady. And I think it was really interesting that a lot of the guys kind of gave it a half and half. They're like, well, I don't know. I mean, they say they want to be treated like ladies, but then they get mad if you don't treat them like a guy. But then they get mad if you do treat them like that. And so, to me, for one thing, it sounds like we're sending the guys mixed messages and they're a little bit confused on how they should even treat us. So, in that, I'm going to ask you, I think everybody has heard the expression, act like a lady, right? Okay, so what does that mean? Like, what do you think when someone tells you to act like a lady? What comes to your mind?
Manners, be classy.
Manners and be classy? Anyone else? Does it make you mad? Does it get on your nerves? Are you good with it?
Depending on the situation.
Okay. Well, I kind of set a little trap for you because I don't like the expression act like a lady. Because an actor is basically a really good liar. Okay, the definition of an actor is someone who behaves in a way that is not genuine. So, if you act like a lady, you are not one. You're just pretending that you are. You're an actor. For example, I know this is going to disappoint a lot of you. Ready? Jennifer Lawrence is not Katniss Everdeen, and she cannot shoot a squirrel in the eye with an arrow. I was so disappointed when I found that out. I'm like, oh, Katniss, really? She's an actor. She can't really do it. She's just pretending that she can. Okay, so I think that the term act like a lady should be replaced with be one. Be a lady. And that does take effort and training, and it takes living like nobody else chooses to live in these days, when you can see that the gentlemen are obviously extremely confused on what a lady even is and how she should be acting. So what's very interesting is I like to look up definitions, and I looked up what a lady even is because in our culture I think we're far removed from even understanding. I think a lot of times we use the word lady and we just think that means the female sex, and that's not what a lady is. The definition in the dictionary said that a lady is a woman of superior social position, especially one of noble birth. So a synonym for that would be a noblewoman, a duchess, or a countess. That's the definition of a lady. I was like, wow. So if there's any Jane Austen fans, anyone, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, name some more. But in hers, if you were a commoner or a peasant, then you weren't considered to be a lady. So the problem in Pride and Prejudice was the main character, who, if you've seen the movie, it was Keira Knightley, was not considered to be a lady because she didn't come from noble blood or money, and so therefore Mr. Darcy could not marry her because she was not a genuine lady. So basically, if you didn't have royal blood, you didn't have a chance to be considered a lady, so stinks to be you. You don't have a chance in the world. And so you're probably wondering what that has to do with anything. But when I thought about it, I want you ladies to catch the parable here, and the fact that Christian women really ought to be the highest model of what a true lady really is. Because there's not that much nobility left in the world. There's some, but for the most part we don't have kings, queens, and literal nobility on earth. But if you look at 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 9, it says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God." So in scripture it tells us that at one time we weren't anybody. We were not a people. We were not the chosen ones. We were not basically Israel. But then he called us. And he brought us out of that, and he's like, now you're a chosen people, you're a royal priesthood, you're holy, you're set apart, you're different. And so you need to now behave as if you are. For instance, Kate Middleton was not born royal. She doesn't have an ounce of royal blood in her body. But now she is married to a prince. So she is the Duchess of Cambridge, and there's a higher expectation on her because of the family that she was brought into. So she was called to come to a higher standard, and she had to think about that. From studying some of the things in her life, they required her to take basically princess lessons to learn how to behave as if she was royal. And so she had to decide if she wanted to live a life where everybody was watching everything she did and judging it. Now, have you ever felt that way as a believer, that because you're a Christian, people are, and as a pastor, Avery's like me, as a pastor's daughter, that people have a microscope on your life and they're really watching to see if you are going to live separate and if you're going to live holy, because that's your call. If we are in the family, if we've been brought into a royal family, Jesus is called the King of Kings. There's no king that's ever higher. And last week we talked about how physical marriage is meant to represent heavenly marriage. It's not like marriage on earth is the true marriage. It's marriage in heaven is the true marriage, and we're just supposed to give a picture of it here on earth. Well, kings and queens and all that, that's not the real thing. The real thing is the King of Kings and what his family is representing. So when we're adopted into his kingdom, it puts a greater call on our life. And if you've thought about the word, it says, oh, well, we're supposed to represent Jesus to other people. Well, if you think about that word, it says we're supposed to present him again. We are supposed to be his representatives. Kate Middleton represents the royal family. It is her job to represent Prince Charles, Prince William, Prince Harry, bless his heart. His parents named him Prince Harry. But she's called to represent that. So everything she does is a reflection on them. And so whether we like it or not, when we become believers, then that puts this status on us of people are watching you to be holy, to be set apart, and to be different. And you're not allowed to look like the world, act like the world, and be like the world, because God has set a higher standard on you when you said yes to him. So in that, I thought, well, what in the world does it mean to be a modern lady then? According to Scripture, according to what I feel that God would expect of women who call themselves women of God and his daughters and his representatives. And I just picked a few of the points in your notebook. There's one of the handouts at the back says the 10 qualities of a lady. And so I just picked a couple of those, and you can look at the rest of them at a different time, but I just picked a few of them. And one of them I picked is the one that says, I don't even know what number it is on your chart, but it says a lady is well-spoken and this I underlined, and a generous listener. She knows how to effectively connect with others and communicate her message. Her words are kind, tactful, free from gossip. She is gracious and she is inclusive. So the hardest part, I think, for most of us is free from gossip, because we're women. And unfortunately, men struggle with lust as women struggle with gossip. We have every excuse in the world, for saying something that's gossipy. So that's a difficult one. And then the other one is being a generous listener. Most of us like to run our mouths, and listening is a true gift. And I'm going to tell you, if you've ever had a conversation with Avery's mother, then Avery's mother is one of the best listeners I know. I mean, she is completely engaged in what you were saying, and in the back of her mind, she may be thinking, I do not care. But her face is looking at you, she's shaking her head, she's engaged. I mean, she's an awesome listener. I don't know if you've ever heard this acronym, but I like it. It's before you speak, think, THINK, the acronym. So number 1, think. Is it true? T. Is it H, helpful? Is it I, inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So before any words come out of your mouth, you need to think about, is what you're saying true? Is what you're saying helpful? Is what you're saying inspiring to others? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And I always say, if you're about to repeat something, if the same statement was to be made about you, would you still go ahead and repeat it? Proverbs 31:26 says, she speaks with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. I think bridling the tongue, especially when you're angry, is one of the hardest aspects of being female, because we can justify it one way and out the other, and it's almost like it comes out before. Have you ever seen the movie Liar, Liar? And he's like got his hands on his mouth and he's trying to like keep himself from speaking. That's how it feels sometimes if you're female, trying to keep this shut when it does not need to be gossiping. Another thing on being a generous listener, I've heard the expression, remember that I in a conversation is boring. Meaning, have you ever been around somebody and they're a one-upper? Like if Avery says, hey, I went to this tennis match and I was playing in the game. I went to a tennis match, Avery, and I won the blue ribbon and my tennis match was so awesome, and you just totally cut off Avery's tennis match lesson. Or if someone says, Carly starts to tell a story. Oh, we went to church camp. I went to church camp, and when we went to church camp, and you just totally cut off what Carly had to say because what you had to say was obviously more important. Have you ever had those conversations with people like that? And it doesn't matter what you're trying to tell them, they're going to one up your story. It doesn't matter how many points you scored in the game, they scored more. It doesn't matter, how many, I don't know what it is, but it's always going to be, your story's never as good as theirs. But a true lady is not out to impress other people with her stats. She's not out to one up someone else and to make herself look better. She's out to go, oh, tell me about that tennis match, Avery. How did your tennis match go? She's interested in somebody else. It's not all about her. So if your conversations are I, me, then that's really boring. I mean, as much as we want to think that everyone else wants to hear everything about us, but if you think about the friends in your life that are truly good listeners, one of my dearest friends almost can't talk about herself. I'll try to ask her how she is, and she immediately starts asking about how I am. And she's one of my favorite friends. Why? Because she lets me talk about me. And if you have a friend that does that, it's just drawing. It's very, that's one of the greatest gifts we can give somebody, is being able to listen to them and to not interrupt them. Do y'all hate it when people do that to you? When you're trying to tell them a story and they want to finish your sentence, or they want to pretend like they know what you're talking about and they just cut you off right in mid-sentence. The discipline of shut your mouth and open your ears. If y'all heard that, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you speak. The other thing on that, it says that at the end of that, it says she is gracious and inclusive. A lady finds the outsider and welcomes them in. I believe it was either Chrissy or Elise was talking about how when a new person comes to school, that they try to find that person and bring them in and say, hey, we want you to be part of our group. And that is a true lady. You hear that, you see the movie Mean Girls, when their purpose is to exclude everybody. Well, you're not in our inner circle. A true lady, her purpose is to include. I've told this story on Carly before, but Josiah noticed last year when there was this kid at lunch, and he always sat by himself. Nobody else would sit with him. And so Carly, and I don't know who the other person was. Who was it, Carly, that went with you?
Mackenzie.
Okay, Carly and Mackenzie, if y'all know Mackenzie, would go over and sit with this kid who didn't, and he wouldn't even talk. I mean, according to Josiah, the kid was just like kind of sitting there, not even saying anything back to them, but they made the effort to see across the room, outside of themselves, here is this person that's by themselves and they need someone. So in my viewpoint, a lady is someone that can think outside of herself. If you look at Kate Middleton, I mean, she married a prince. She's super classy, super beautiful, and yet she looks super approachable. You don't look like you could go up to her and she would, are you kidding, I'm the princess? And for girls that have the I'm the princess attitude, then that's very offsetting to everybody else. But to girls who have an inclusive, I know I can trust Kelsey with anything, because anytime gossip comes up, Kelsey's the one that's like, you know what, Avery's my friend, and I would just rather not talk about that. Then everyone's going to know they can trust Kelsey. They're going to know she's a lady. So then, do y'all have any comments on that before I go on? Would everyone agree that bridling the tongue is one of the hardest things to do? As a girl, we get angry at someone, and the first thing we want to do is run them down with our mouth. The first thing a guy wants to do, hit him with his fist. The first thing a woman wants to do is lash them with their tongue. Okay, a lady is generous with her time, wisdom, and resources. She is a woman of her word and follows through with her commitments, whatever the cost. She willingly serves others and extends a hand to those in need. Okay, so the part about she follows through with her commitments, here's the key to that. Don't overcommit yourself, girls. Learn to say no. That's something that all women have a problem with. I'm looking at you because I know. You get asked to do things and you feel guilty saying no, so you say yes, and then you can't always do a good job on your commitment. So, number one, limit yourself. Don't overexert yourself. Do what really matters to you. Give yourself a quality of life and not a quantity of life. so that when someone asks you to do something and you say yes, they know you're going to do a great job and they know you're going to follow through with it. And then she willingly serves others and extends a hand to those in need. Proverbs 31:20 says she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hand to the needy. And for time's sake, I'm not going to read all of Matthew 25, but I think you've all heard it. It's when Jesus talks about the sheep and the goats, and he says, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you visited me. I was sick and you came to me. And then on the opposite side, he says, when you didn't do those things for the least of these, you didn't do them to me. When you did do them, you did them to me. That's something that God took me through big time about 2 years ago. And for me personally, I'm not telling you this is what he's calling you to do, but for me personally, I realized I had never visited the homeless, clothed the naked, fed the hungry. I'd never done any of those things, yet I called myself his disciple. And so I go now and teach classes at the prison, and I teach classes downtown for the homeless. And if you want to talk about getting yourself out of your comfort zone and realizing that everybody's human, because see, it's really easy for me to come in here and talk to all of you who, I hate to say it, but are, quote, in my class. You know, we're all kind of in the same playing field as far as our social status, and we, you know, have nice houses with cars and cell phones and that. But then when you go to somebody, I had a woman in my class, gosh, I can't even talk about her. I had a woman in my class this week that was a prostitute. And I met her 2 years ago. She came to a Good Friday service that we had, and this poor woman, she stood up and she was crying through the whole service, and she so badly wanted to worship, but you could see the shame heaped upon her head. And nobody had ever told her that she was beautiful and that she was worth it and that she could be a lady, that she could have value. And so you could just see all this shame heaped upon her because of what she had been born into that wasn't her fault. And I thought, what if that would have been me? What if I would have been born into that family? I didn't have any control over the family I was born into. It could have been me. So if that was me and I had been a prostitute and a streetwalker for 8 years, homeless, would I want someone to come to me and look me in the eye and say, you're so beautiful and you're so valuable and God loves you so very much, and put my arms around her and embrace her as a sister and not just kind of throw money her, well, here's $5, go get yourself a hamburger, lady, you're gross, get away from me. I mean, my heart just broke for her. And I don't know what the Lord may call you to do in your life. For right now, on campus and it's in high school, it could just be finding that person that everyone else is like, well, that kid stinks. Why doesn't someone just tell them to take a shower? Great balls of fire. Maybe their family can't afford to buy them deodorant. You know, maybe the girl that is awkward and nobody wants to talk to her, no one's ever looked her in the eye and told her that she has value and that she has worth. So whatever the Lord puts on your heart to do, no matter what that is, and somehow, girls, I want us to do a group outreach, whether it's to the juvie detention center where we go to the girls that are in juvie, whether it's, you know, doing something for the homeless or the sick or whatever, just because it's just such an incredible experience to get out of yourself and to go really serve other people and see the difference. And you know what? When you're working with someone that's that destitute, they're really open to the gospel. Sometimes when you talk to middle class people that have everything in the world, they're like, what time is it? Oh my gosh, I'm so bored. But when it's people that are desperate for God's love, I mean, it's just amazing what you can see happen. So on that, there's an expression, I don't know who the quote is by, but it says, when you are older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and one of them is for helping others. And I think that we should remember that. Do you know who it is, Avery?
It's an Audrey Hepburn.
Is it an Audrey? It probably, I love Audrey Hepburn. Okay. So a lady shows that she respects her body by the way she presents it publicly. I am appalled sometimes at the way people present their body publicly. I'm like, do you realize that there's cameras all over this nation now? And that probably just got posted on somebody's Facebook page. Her words and actions are the same at school and campus as they are at church. If they're not, you're an actor. If you're one way in the youth group and in the church, and you're a completely different way when you get to school into the world, then you're just being a good actor. But a lady's words and actions are the same no matter where she's at. She's always filled with grace and kindness and love towards others. And it's not a good show while youth pastor's watching or while Pastor Rick is watching. It is consistent. A lady is consistent in her behavior because she is a lady. She's not acting like one. A lady doesn't encourage inappropriate action from guys or girls by laughing at crude behavior. Now, everyone's been in that situation where there's some guy or girl that is telling a story or something that you know is completely inappropriate. And you know that they would not be telling that same story if they were standing right here. But everybody else is laughing and it's like, oh, haha, it's funny. But when you do that, you're saying that that's okay. It's okay to be that way. It's okay, it's too late. Oh well. A lady's uncomfortable around any disrespectful language and talk. And so here's the thing. Years ago, if a boy were to use curse words around a girl, that would be considered completely vulgar and inappropriate. Why has that changed?
Women themselves say it.
Do what?
Because
Women themselves are saying it. Yeah, I mean, I've told my son, he's like, I don't know what to do, Mom, when the guys are talking that way. And I said, just say, you know what, there's ladies present, guys, don't do that. And he's like, Mom, the girls are saying it too. And so when we lower the bar and when we're okay with it, then it just encourages them to do that. You know, when a girl's not offended by it, there is an expression that's basically, women are the morality bearers of society. And when a woman loses her morals, society loses its morals. When women are okay with inappropriate stories, inappropriate language, inappropriate jokes, and even if you're uncomfortable on the inside and you're, ha ha ha, yeah, it's funny, then it's encouraging the guys, and they're learning, oh, I don't have to act like a gentleman around her. She's just one of the guys. That's what the guys were saying. We're confused. I mean, a man would have never thought about telling an inappropriate story in front of a woman 50 years ago. But now they don't even blink or realize that we're in the room. And I'm not saying that you should come off with this snooty air, but it should be where they know by your lack of ha ha ha, that's funny, and just your silence, they should know, okay, Avery's not comfortable when we're talking that way. Let's not talk that way around Avery. You know, let's not tell that story around her, and they'll know that that's not okay with you. And that's biblical. Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Or Ephesians 5:4. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place among you. Now, ladies, that's talking to everybody. Paul wasn't just like, be nice around the ladies. I mean, he was talking to everybody. But again, if as ladies, if we don't set that high standard for the guys, then they're going to be as crude as we'll allow them to be, basically. There's a problem when a woman can no longer blush. If a guy could say anything in the world and it wouldn't embarrass you at all, we've got a problem. We need to be like, you know, that I don't need that much information. That's just not quite. Thank you, but I really don't want to hear that. This is from the 1948 Vogue, ironically, Book of Etiquette. So think about how Vogue magazine is now, and think about in 1948 how much of a change we're seeing. Men gossip as much as women. When a girl chooses to live in an unconventional way, men will not hesitate to convey the fact every time her name is mentioned, that she may be beautiful, but is also very unconventional. They may be admiring, they may say that she's beautiful, but every other man in the room will prick up his ears, file her name in his memory, and realize that with this girl, his best behavior is not necessary. In other words, she's not a lady. You don't have to treat her with respect. You don't have to use your best manners around her. She's not a lady. That was in 1948. I think Vogue magazine has not improved over the years because now they're encouraging women to be flamboyant, to put it nicely. Okay, Now y'all are gonna laugh at this part, but doesn't matter how a lady carries herself. Last week, we kind of joked around about sitting with your knees together, but how loud does body language actually speak? Lady Gaga. What's ironic is that her name is Lady Gaga. That doesn't look like a lady to me. That looks like I'm gonna beat you up and whatever else I wanna do. Not very appealing. So again, girls, whether we like it or not, people judge you by the outside first. The first thing they're looking at is how you're dressed and what your body language says before they ever have a conversation with you. So what is your body language saying? Again, Kate Middleton had to take princess lessons. So here's Kate Middleton before she took her princess lessons. No, Katie, that's bad. She's getting out of a car. Number one, I would say those shorts are entirely inappropriately short. And number two, we can see her undies because she's not taking care of business in the way she's holding herself. Then Kate got brought into the royal family and Kate took princess lessons. And then Kate knew how to get out of a car without showing the whole world her underwear. You may not think it matters, but people do see and people do watch and people do notice the way you carry yourself. Is it harder to remember to close your legs? Yeah, it is. Is it hard to learn the right moves in sports? But yeah, it is. But does your coach go, well, Avery, just fling the tennis racket however you think works best? I mean, they don't let you do that in sports. And so it took work and effort for her to go, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to learn to get out of the car like a lady so that I don't show all the men in the world what's under my dress. So in that you would think, well, that shouldn't be that big a deal, but really body language says a whole lot. Which one looks happier? She's smiling. You know, she's having a good time. People walk around all day just, you know, sourpuss, angry face, like they're mad. And again, even if I'm sitting with my, knees together and I'm just like, that's just not very approachable. And so you may think, why the heck does that matter? Well, it matters because if you'll remember these things, you don't know who you might run into that's your next job interview, that's your next college. You may be interviewing for college. And if you're not aware of how you're presenting yourself publicly, you might run into that person somewhere you're not expecting to run into them. And if they are like, oh, that's that girl that like her undies were showing to the entire world, or, something like that. So you may not in your mind, people in their mind aren't going to just automatically know what is it about this girl that's classy and approachable, and what is it about this girl that looks like she's just a witch. I mean, they may not know it, but inside they know it. Like if you ran across them, you might not go, oh, well, I know what it is. She's smiling and she's sitting like a lady. Your brain may not think that, but inside you're going to go, this girl's classy and approachable, and this girl's not. She doesn't laugh when I use inappropriate words. She doesn't bend over with short shorts on for me to see everything that's underneath. She doesn't sit like a guy and belch real loud and scratch herself, publicly. I mean, it sounds funny, but if you watch people, be a people watcher, and you'll kind of notice how people are real like fidgety and all over the place and stuff like that. And again, you're like, why does this matter? Why does this even matter? Again, it doesn't matter sometimes in day-to-day life. It doesn't matter in here, when we're all girls. But when you go out there and you forget those things, then you're looking more like Lady Gaga or just Miss Mad Lady, instead of the happy girl. Happy girls are the prettiest. And that may not be your taste. I'm not saying Kate Middleton should be everyone's taste in clothes and what she does and all that. I'm just saying the fact that she is willing to invest in what she is showing other people about herself.